everybody, it's Mr. Parks here, coming to you from our classroom. I have come up here and been here for just a few minutes and wanted to do a quick lesson on fractions for some of our students. You know, fractions are one of those great things that you can take a whole piece of something and break it up into smaller pieces evenly to distribute. So we're going to do a quick lesson on fractions. And my question is always, who likes pizza? Because to me, fractions and pizza go hand in hand. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a whole pizza pie for us right here. So I'm going to draw this whole pizza. I know several students in our class are missing whole pizza. I'm going to use round pizza, although sometimes our pizza at school is square or even octagon shaped, which is also stop sign pizza. We love those. But we're going to use this square pizza right now. So circle pizza, round pizza. So I have a whole pizza right here. So right now this pizza is in one specific part. It is one part of the pizza. There are not individual segments. It is one part. And then the question would be how many parts in all? So that would be 1 over 1, which would give me one whole pizza. Okay, so I have one whole pizza. If I were to draw another one, maybe there's a 2 for 2 deal, then I would have 2 whole pizzas. But we're going to start with just one pizza and break it down like this. Now, when you get the pizza out of the box, normally it's not shaped, it's been cut. And probably the first cut they make is right down the middle into 2 equal parts. So we make that pizza into 2 equal parts, and instead now I have 2 parts here and 2 in all. So if I have 2 over 2, I would still equal what? 1 whole pizza. But the problem is this is divided up into, here is 1 out of 2 parts, and here is 1 out of 2 parts. And when I add those 2 together, it equals 2 out of 2 parts, which makes a whole. So if I were hungry and I ate 1 part of this, this would be eating 1 what? 1 half, or 1 out of 2 equal parts. Now the key is I've got a lot of small children. And if you know, sometimes when you divide stuff, you don't always divide them equally, right? When you break that cookie, you look and go, which one's bigger? I'm gonna take the bigger one for me, give the one that's not as big to little brother. Fractions are always about dividing into equal parts. So here we take our 1 whole, we divide it into 2 halves, or 2 equal parts. So you notice that 1 half plus 1 half still gives me a whole pizza, or 2 out of 2 parts. Now a half would be represented, let's go ahead and eliminate this pack because we're hungry. A half would be 1 out of those 2 equal parts. So here I have an example of a half. I've got 1 half of pizza and I've got another half of pizza. So my pizza, is still a whole, but I have these 2 exactly equal halves to represent. Now, I've got a big family, everybody. Most people know that. We don't have 1 child, we don't have 2 child, we don't have 3 kids, we don't even have 4, we have 5 kids. So I cannot give each of them just 2 pieces. I've got to divide it up even more. So if I divide this pizza as we did before into 2 equal parts, and then I try to start to cut it down the midline this way, well now, how many parts do I have? Let's count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 parts in all, okay? Now, if I have all 4 of those parts together, any number over itself, 4 out of 4, still gives me 1 whole pizza, right? But these are going to be divided not into halves, but into what we call as fourths. So 1/4 each of these pieces equals 1/4. Now, the cool part about fourths is we've got a ways to go, all right? So I can put these fourths together just like this. And if you notice that my fourths, 2/4 equal what? Yeah, 2/4 equal 1/2. Well, that's interesting. So if I were to take 2/4 and 1/2 and add them together, what would it give me? That's right, it gives me 1 whole, and I could do this down here. But for our sake of understanding, we're going to keep our fourths and our halves separated, just because they're not necessarily playing nice together. So we're going to do 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 1 whole. So I started off my fraction, I divided it up, I divided my pizza into 4 equal pieces. These are big pieces, that's what we like. But you know what, the problem is in my family, everybody's still not getting a piece. We are in trouble. So we've got to keep dividing. Now, maybe I'm lucky enough and I ordered 2 pizzas, maybe, all right? Now the key for us dividing pizzas is, or dividing anything equally to fractions is, the key word is equally. So if I take my pizza, oh, I grabbed the wrong marker. If I take my pizza and I divide it into half like I did before, and then I divide it again into halves or another section across the midline, I have fourths, right? Well, let me see if I can split these into equal parts and go this way and then this way. Okay, looks like a sweet basketball from this end, doesn't it? But it is still our pizza. Now, how many parts do we have in all? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 parts in all. Now, how many parts would be present? Well, they're all present right here. So I have 8 parts in all. That gives me 1 whole pizza. That's right, 1 whole pizza. All right. The next thing that I would do is I'm going to count them out into eighths. So I have 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, and 1, you guessed it, 1/8. So I have 8 parts. These are each 1 part of the whole. So if I add these together, I have 1/8 plus 1/8, that would equal what? 2/8, right? I have 2 of these 1/8 pieces. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now you may think, Mr. Parks, how come I don't add those bottom numbers together? Because that is the number of the parts in all. Those each represent 1 of those specific parts. So when we add them together, I don't have 16 parts, although we'll get to that eventually. I have 8 parts. I have 2 of 8 parts. Okay, so I have 2 eighths. If I were to add 2 more eighths together, so I have 2 eighths plus 2 eighths, how many eighths would that give me? Yep, that is absolutely right. It would give me 4 eighths. Right, 2 eighths plus 4 eighths equals, 2 eighths plus 2 eighths equals 4 eighths. Now, I'm not the rocket scientist here, we all know that, but if I were to tell you, what does 4 eighths look like to you? Yes, it looks like 1/2. Okay, and as we start unfolding fractions, we'll talk about how you can reduce those fractions, which we have a long way to go. But we'll start recognizing and understanding these fractions and going that way. Well, you know, sometimes when I take my whole, like that is right there, break things into half, break things into fourths, even break things into eighths, everybody's not entirely satisfied. So there are other ways to divide, and I could get even smaller. We will probably save that for another lesson, but I do want to show you an important thing, especially as we're looking at dividing fractions. Now, I struggle with dividing things equally. I have a big family, as I mentioned, and we always say life's not fair, and that is a true statement that happens all throughout. But if I were to divide up this circle, this pizza, sometimes I want to divide it into 3 equal parts. Now for me, it's normally easy just to draw the lines that are straight and go from there. So I'm going to take my best attempt and to go into what would look like 3 equal parts. Now this is important because I think dividing things up into equal parts is what defines fractions. So we have to make sure those are equal parts. Now one of the questions is, how do we state this? Again, how many parts are in all? 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 parts in all. All right, 3 total parts present. So here we have 1 whole represented by 3 thirds. Okay. Now the reason I say thirds is this is cut into 3. You all know if you're running a race, first place, second place, third represents 3, and here are 3 thirds. Each 1/3 represents a part of the whole. So we want to not only look at our fractions and what we can divide them up to, but also ways that we can represent them in unique, equal parts of a whole. As this lesson continues to unfold, we'll start looking at how to add more wholes, more parts, how to add those parts together to equal multiple numbers, and like we mentioned, reducing. But here's your taste of fractions. We hope this whets your appetite for pizza. I think I'm going to leave right now and go get some pizza because that's all I can think about. So you guys have a good one. We'll see you next time.